Recruiting is starting to pick up, and a lot of people are already turning their eyes towards the class of 2026, which is being promoted as perhaps the best Nebraska in-state recruiting class ever. So in this video, I'm going to answer the hype. We're going to go over 5 of the most premier players from that cycle. We'll go in detail about who they are, what they bring to the table, and their relation to Nebraska in Matt Rhule. So real quick, if you like the content, please hit the like button on this video. It really helps me out, and it's completely free, along with subscribing to the channel if you don't want to miss out on any more Nebraska offseason and recruiting videos just like this. Nobody is doing it like us here on the Will Stimmons Sports channel. But without further ado, let's get into it, talking about the class of 2026. And right off the bat, you are going to see so much hype around Nebraska in-state recruiting over the next 2 years. We already saw in the last month, USC came to town and was talking to some of these recruits. We saw Penn State, Texas A&M, Mizzou, Kansas State, Illinois, Oklahoma, Texas. I mean, all of these programs are coming to Omaha. They're coming to Lincoln to try to recruit our players. Nebraska in-state recruiting is only getting better. They're churning out 4-stars at a rate we've never seen before. They're getting national offers. So, again, it's going to be a lot harder for Nebraska and Matt Rhule to lock down the borders, and we're going to talk about that as the video progresses. But let's start off with my number 1 player that we're going to talk about. Again, these are not in any particular order. These are just the 5 best players, in my opinion, from this class. Starting off with Champ Davis from Omaha North, listed at wide receiver, 5'9", 190, and you watch him on film. You compare him early on to a guy like Isaiah McMorris, a Nebraska commit. You compare him to perhaps even a Wan'Dale Robinson, just a shifty slot receiver. He has the ball in his hands. He can make you miss. They try to get him involved any way possible, but really good juke move, really good hands just in general. Again, the size is not a benefit, but a lot of times you don't need that size in order to be a productive wide receiver. So he's going to be a slot receiver if Nebraska goes after him. There's strong Nebraska interest already early on in that process. And last year for the Vikings, he had 600 yards as a freshman, also played as a sophomore, but he also played as a freshman. So can keep your eyes on Champ Davis. Really, really good wide receiver in this class. And you're going to see a common theme throughout this video. A lot of wide receivers. We're going to talk about some tight ends, defensive backs, and then we'll get into the O-line as the end of the video progresses. But again, Nebraska is getting better at churning out wide receivers, churning out skill position players, and that's something that really the state lacked over the last decade. But let's go to my number 2 player coming out of Millard South. Again, you see the helmet back there. Got to support my Millard South guys. Isaac Jensen, listed at 6'6", 220, plays tight end. Recently received a Nebraska offer along with Iowa State. And again, you watch him on film, had 400 yards receiving last year for the Patriots. Complete jump ball machine. You just throw it up to him. He does the rest. There was a couple times where Millard South just did that. They threw him a jump ball. He comes down with it. And a guy who has a lot of wide receiver experience already early on, mostly played wide receiver for Millard South, but the Patriots expect him probably to play a little bit more tight end as his career progresses, and I know Nebraska is definitely recruiting him to be a tight end. Probably needs to put a little more weight on that frame. That's to be expected. He's only a sophomore. That's not a concern at all, but Isaac Jensen, probably the best tight end in this class by far. I expect him to be a 4-star when it's all said and done. I really think Isaac Jensen is the truth, and Nebraska is going after him really early on in the process. Number 3, Araf Evans, coming out of Bellevue West. He actually transferred over to Millard North this offseason, listed as 6'1", 190, plays defensive back, and you look at the offer list. Penn State, Texas A&M. Early on in the process, you see national teams taking interest in this guy. He played as a freshman for Bellevue West and is already being mocked up as perhaps one of the best defensive backs we've seen come from Nebraska in the last decade. Again, listed at 6'1", super physical, but also really fast, plays both ways. And Araf Evans, man, a guy who can play basically all over this defense. I know Nebraska is really going to want to go after him, especially when you see that Penn State, Texas A&M are trying to get his talents to their programs as well. Now let's go on to perhaps the best player in this complete cycle for Nebraska in-state recruiting. Number 4, Amarion Jackson, listed at 6'1", plays wide receiver for Millard South. Stats do not lie. As of last year in his sophomore campaign, he led Class A in receiving yards, had 1,100 yards along with 12 touchdowns. And the offer list reflects that. Just recently got offered from Illinois and Minnesota, and I expect Nebraska to be the next team to, in fact, offer him. And again, you watch him on film. I'm the play-by-play guy for Millard South. I got to watch him all year long. And again, just complete stud. Has one of the best hands you'll see in the state of Nebraska. Great route running, great frame. He's listed at 6'1". I don't think that does him enough justice. He probably should be around 6'2", 6'3". Not done growing at all. And a guy who also played as a freshman for Millard South. So, man, stats don't lie. When was the last time you have seen a wide receiver in state lead Class A in receiving yards as a sophomore? It doesn't happen. That's unheard of. That tells you how good Amarion Jackson is. And it's not like Millard South had a bad offense where he was the only solid player. Like, no, again, you see Isaac Jensen. You see a couple other guys who are being recruited to big-time programs in there. So he's just getting it done, man. And Amarion Jackson's a guy who Nebraska needs to go after. And we'll talk about Millard South a little bit more here. There's some guys who are not included in this list who are complete studs who Nebraska is also going after. Millard South in general has probably the best in-state recruiting class in one school we've ever seen just come from Nebraska at any point in time. Not only do you have Amarion Jackson, who's being recruited by Power 5 programs, Isaac Jensen, who's being recruited by Power 5 programs, but you have Jet Tamala, who's ranked as the #1 quarterback in the class of 2026 Nebraska in-state. You have Eli Mitchell, who is listed as the #2 defensive back from Nebraska in-state, has some Power 5 interest there. You have Landon Van Sergen, who has strong Nebraska interest. I expect the Cornhuskers to offer him very soon. He plays offensive line. And then sticking it with the offensive line, you have Carter Glab, who was listed as a top 10 center this year in all of Nebraska high school football, only as a sophomore, who also has strong Nebraska interest there. So I expect all those guys to really get on campus for Nebraska, potentially receive some offers. I know all of them have already been on campus, but I expect at least 3 of the 4, maybe 4 of the 4 to get Nebraska offers when it's all said and done. So Millard South, again, you're going to want to keep your eyes on the Patriots over the next 2 years. They're producing something at a high level. They're probably going to win state in 2024 along with 2025. But let's take it to my 5th player, another wide receiver, and this, again, really, really solid player here in DaShawn Prince, coming out of Omaha Central, listed at 6'3", more of a physical wide receiver, had 500 yards last year for the Eagles. Again, just super, super physical. He'll go up, he'll get a jump ball. And I can't speak about how great this receiver class is in general. Again, a lot of people projected the class of 2023 to perhaps be the class of 2024 to perhaps be the best wide receiver in-state class ever. Again, with Isaiah Morris, with Davon Hall, with Carter Nelson. This probably will be better when it's all said and done. And the fact that DaShawn Prince, along with Amarion Jackson, along with Champ Davis are in here, man, it's really, really good. So DaShawn Prince, again, has some interest from USC, has some interest from other programs around the country. And they have Central has another kid by the name of Tony Pittman who recently just received a USC offer. He's actually a freshman in the class of 2027, so keep your eye on him as well. So DaShawn Prince, more of a physical, go up and get it, wide receiver X type of guy, and he will round out my list. So, man, Nebraska in-state recruiting only getting better. I forgot to mention one guy. Honorable mention goes to Jerron Cannon, probably the best running back in-state out of Omaha North. He's a physical running back. He can make him miss. He's also has great wheels behind him, so would not be surprised if Nebraska tries to go after him later in the process, but I really like what he brings to the table as well. But, man, I mean, you look at this class, really, really solid. They're stacked at the skill positions. Basically, every single position they got you covered except for about linebacker. But the fact that Nebraska is starting to produce wide receivers, defensive backs, tight ends at a high level year after year can only mean good things for national recruiting. And again, O-line has always been awesome for in-state. That's going to be no different. Again, I expect Carter Glaber, Landon Van Sergen to probably get offers from Nebraska when it's all said and done, along with some other guys on that D-line around the state. So let me know what you think about this video, some guys that you really want to go after in that class of 2026. Again, I know it's a little bit early, but that recruiting period is really going to start to ramp up, and it's getting so much national attention, I had to make a video about it. So again, let me know what you think down below. Again, make sure to like the video and subscribe and not miss any more Nebraska recruiting videos like this. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Met Rule, and see you in the next one.